Hello, my name is Sophie Jones and I'm the Impact and Innovation Officer here at Cardiff University's Commercial Development team. Commercialisation is a route that hasn't always previously been considered much as a method of achieving impact within the social sciences, and therefore we're working together as a team to provide the support to our arts, humanities and social services academics needed to navigate to the commercialisation landscape. We're going to find out a little bit more today on how the team is achieving this by speaking to Lilian Matovu, who is our ESRC Impact Acceleration Account, sometimes known as the IAA Account Manager, and Dr. Michaela Gall, who is the Institutional Translational Manager who leads in the Wellcome Trust. So let's start off by giving, if each of you could give me a brief background about what your role entails within the university. So Lil, do you want to go first?
Yes, hi. So hi everyone, my name is Lilian Matovu and I am the Impact Manager for the ESRC Impact Acceleration Account here at Cardiff. And my main role is mainly to manage this account and to facilitate the impacts from the research, social science research from our colleges.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Lil. And Michaela, can you give us a little brief background around your role?
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Michaela Gall and I manage the Wellcome Trust Institutional Translational Partnership Award, also known as the ITPA. So the aim of this award is to encourage a culture change around research translation by supporting not only biomedical scientists, but social and humanities researchers in translating their research to benefit health. And this award has been running in the university for about 18 months now. So we use this funding to support researchers to address sort of barriers in their training needs, to address barriers that they come across in funding, and to support them in their on their translational pathway.
That's great. Thanks, Michaela and Lil. I know you've both touched on it briefly there, but do you want to give me a little bit more information around like the aim of the funding and how you manage this, and a little bit more information of how this works on a day-to-day basis within Cardiff?
Yeah, sure. So Cardiff University has held an IAA account since 2015, and we're actually one of 26 research organizations that has been in receipt of further funding for the period of 2019 to 2023. So the main purpose of the IAA is to support the activities which will bridge the gap between the findings of social science research and the take-up by relevant non-academic stakeholders, with the sole aim of generating impact as a result. So for us, the IAA has been instrumental in acting as a useful source of funding for impact activities, but at the same time, we're increasingly seeing a steady number of researchers who are recognizing the added benefits of commercialization as a valuable pathway to maximizing social impact.
Lil, that's great. Thank you. Very interesting. Michaela, have you got anything else to add a little bit?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention really our funding schemes that we've got as part of the ITPA. So we've got two funding schemes. One is the Access to Expertise scheme, where people can access external expertise to enable them to overcome a barrier to translation. And the other one is Translation of Concept, the TOC scheme. So that also enables researchers, once they have some results from their research, to move along the translational pathway. And the other thing we do is hold training events. So some examples of the trainings that we've had is things which give case studies of research to impact and market research. We're also hoping to have a training around implementation of research to benefit health. And that will be research to make a difference to policy, to be taken up by the NHS and other external stakeholders, and also setting up a spin-out company. So we're always open to receive requests for further training around translation that researchers may have.
Within each of your roles, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing the funding of social science or commercialization at the moment? Is there anything where you feel like there's a barrier or there's a challenge that you come across daily?
I think for us on the ESRC, I think one of the challenges we face as so many knowledge exchange or technology transfer officers is probably the general lack of recognition and understanding of the added value of social science research, not only sometimes by the researcher themselves, but by the private sector. So what we're trying to do with the IAA is that we're working hard to initiate a culture change to show our academics the value and potential of their research and how it can be effectively be pitched or communicated to the outside world. We're also trying to initiate an understanding of how they can have their intellectual input acknowledged, protected where appropriate, and the possibility of it being further exploited when engaging with other external stakeholders.
That's great. Thanks, Lil. Michaela, is there anything to add there, or?
Yeah, well, part of my role in the ITPA also involves talking to researchers from across the university about their research and the steps they need to take to move research findings to achieve impact, and that's for the health of patients and societies. And I also talk to them about the barriers that they encounter, potential solutions, and how we can best support them. So from the conversations that we've had with researchers and academics, it's clear that we really need to increase understanding of what is meant by translation and translational pathways, and what is needed to achieve this impact in social sciences. So achieving impact could be through a variety of roles. It can be commercialization, it could be embedding an intervention into the NHS or influencing policy, but we really need to increase understanding of the pathways and the steps needed to get there. And translating the research or going through these steps requires us to ensure that the impact is achieved. And this often requires a number of consecutive funding sources to be obtained. So we try to encourage researchers to think about translation of their research, not just for the immediate step, but further along. And, translation can take up to 10 years.
Yeah.
So we really want them to be aware of what funders are looking for and where the potential funding sources can be accessed. And I think another barrier that we've really encountered is the language. People don't understand what translation means when I'm talking about it, particularly for social scientists and humanities researchers. So I think the language has to be changed. And another thing is, I think that early career researchers really should be supported by their sort of supervisors and perhaps pursuing this and uptaking of training. I speak to some of the sort of more senior mentors and researchers, and some of them think that the main objective for the ECRs should be getting the next funding or potentially getting the papers written. But, there aren't enough places for early career researchers to take up places in the university. They also may need to go outside the university in the future. So they should be encouraged to take up these sort of training opportunities and learning about different aspects, not only the research pathway.
That's really interesting. Thanks, Michaela. And I know from working closely with the IAA, Lily, and that's something that we are trying to do as well in Cardiff, is encourage more ECRs to become involved within the funding, and obviously speaking to a variety of people. As you've both mentioned, communication is key throughout the university, and obviously letting people know that we exist. So that's great that we're all working in sync with one another. So where do you think the greatest opportunities lie, Lil? Is there something that jumps out at you, or does it come as and when, or how do you do this within your role?
So for me personally, I think one of the greatest opportunities at this current moment in time, or the lowest hanging fruit, will probably be exploring the crucial role that social sciences can play in this post-COVID resilience and recovery period. We do know that a number of businesses and other organizations are being forced to pivot and reconsider the manner in which they operate. And I think social science has a vital role to play in contributing to the economy through engaging with the private sector. I think also I would just echo what Michaela mentioned, as in the opportunity also lies in targeting our doctoral and ECRs at the very early phases of their careers to initiate and stimulate the interest in the potential opportunities that commercial interactions can offer in terms of the impact of their research. And I think showcasing and celebrating the outputs and impacts of our more senior champions and their research as encouragement, I think this will enable ECRs to consider these pathways as part of their research, and will also be an added advantage when it comes to the next ref cycle as well. So, yeah.
That's perfect. Thanks, Lil. Really good opportunities there, especially with the fast changing environment, with people having to adapt to COVID situations. I do know, social scientists are coming forward a lot more with their research to support with this. Michaela, have you got anything to add, or should we go on to the next question?
I I think, if people really need to engage with us and, the opportunities afforded by the ITPA, for their funding opportunities, just going back to the challenges a little bit here, we didn't get any applications last time round from social and humanities researchers. So this is an opportunity that we're really keen at Cardiff University for them to take up. And I think, we are speaking to people, trying to encourage it, trying to sort of empower people to apply, and giving them support to do so. And also, making sure that they understand that these calls are also open and accessible to them as well.
I think as well, Michaela, just touching upon that, I know myself and Lil have been working with the ESRC IA for myself 2 years and Lil a few months, maybe nearly a year now, Lil. But again, it's just obviously, like you said, allowing people to know that we exist and we're there to support and we can help. I think it's just obviously doing as much training and as much talks as possible, which is really good. And I think something will click further down the line. People do know now that we exist. We get a lot more disclosures and a lot more people coming forward. So I think the Wellcome Trust is probably still at early phases of people getting to know what you do. But I think over time, me and Lil can say that it does work. So keep plugging away. Okay, so have you got any advice that you give to any of the academics or early career researchers, PhD students looking to commercialise their research? Any top tips from either of you, maybe one or two that you would be able to give to people? Lil, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think, first of all, make sure you understand the added value of your research and the need to explore and understand how you can gain recognition from your intellectual property before you actually engage with external stakeholders. So this may be in the forms of recognition of copyright, database rights, or design rights. And I would probably recommend that you approach your commercialization support team within your institution or organization. And I think it's also upon us to make ourselves more visible, as well as KTOs or TTOs. And you will, as academics, will find that we are an invaluable source of knowledge and support. And they'll find that we do not only cater to the STEM projects, but we can offer advice on the best pathways to commercialization and how the research can be successfully scaled up. I'd also like to mention that in regards to commercialization, I would like to encourage academics and tell them that it's not entirely centralized on making a profit, but rather view this more as an opportunity to maximize the social impact of your research and also the possible added financial sustainability that this type of activity could give to your project.
That's great, Lil, thanks. I think that's really encouraging, for people to know that it's not always, again, about making the profit, but making something self-sustaining is perfect. So brilliant, thank you. And Michaela, have you got anything to add, any top tips to your researchers or people throughout the institution thinking of applying for funding or looking to commercialise their research?
Yeah, it's just, be open to it. Commercialization, it doesn't have to be for profit, it can be not for profit, but there are benefits. And I think really try, give it a go in trying to understand it and also really engage with us. We're there all the time to talk to you about your translational pathway, about the steps you might need to take, and come to talk to us even at an early stage and engage with us. So we're there to help you. So yeah, and we're always really pleased to hear from anybody. And even if you're not thinking about translation, you should be thinking about what might happen down the line with your research. And it's never too early to do that.
Thanks, Michaela. It's great that you're both very encouraging, like we've always said throughout Cardiff University, and I'm sure other institutions are the same. Come and have a chat with us, speak to us about what you're doing, because there's always someone within the team that could advise. So that's great. So lastly now, just one more question before we go. Are you able to give me an example or two examples, up to you, of success stories within your specialist area? So maybe someone that's had funding off yourself or maybe come to speak to you about funding for commercialization and they've gone on a pathway or journey with yourself. Lil, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I have one example, and it's around a multi-agency decision-making tool that has benefited from IA funding moving along the translational pathway. So this tool was developed by a BBSRC and an ESRC DTP funded doctoral students. And what they found when it came to decision-making processes and major incidents within the fire and rescue services, the practice didn't often reflect the theory or research evidence. So what the team developed was a behavioral marker system for assessing the performance of incident commanders in training and in operation to help them implement the theoretical training in practice. So currently, right now, that this tool is actually being licensed out to various fire and rescue services and is overseen by the Home Office and the Department of Health. And on the next step, on the next translational step for this project, they're now looking to commercially license this tool out to private industrial fire and rescue services and other commercial training companies. So it's a good example of how commercialization and non-commercial licensing can actually work within one project.
That's great, Lil. Thank you. Really interesting. Just to go back to that as an example, again, as we've talked about and Michaela mentioned before, something can take up to 10 years. I'm assuming that didn't take a few weeks or a few months. That's probably been quite a lengthy process over the last few years, maybe.
Yes, it has, yeah. And they've benefited from several parts of IA funding, helping it move along the translational pathway. And that is the added benefit of the IA, is that it's flexible. Applicants can keep on coming back time and time again to help them move their projects along the impact or translational pathway. So, yeah. That's
really good. Thank you. That's a good to mention, because I know sometimes with funding, you're only allowed to apply once, but I know the IAA, people can apply for different pots of funding. So thank you. Michaela, have you got any success stories within the ITPA or any advice that you've given that supported someone on the translational pathway journey?
Well, unfortunately, as I've mentioned previously, we haven't actually had any applications to the funding pots that we have available from humanities and social science researchers. But what we are seeing is sort of further engagement, so that people are engaging with us, they're becoming interested, they're looking at the training opportunities. So, and just one little example, perhaps, we did give some training in market evaluation. So, I was surprised that we actually had some social scientists and humanities researchers engaged in that as well. And we did one-to-one sessions in that afterwards. And at least one of those was taken up by a social scientist.
That's great. I think we can all agree as well going forward with the IAA and obviously Wellcome Trust as a team, we'll be working more together so we can obviously advise and work in harmony there with our training. So we can support one another with the funding. So that's great. Thank you so much, both. I have no more questions, but that's been really, really useful, very informative. So thank you very much.